Greetings, friends. This is Steve Dupuis for the Bible News Prophecy Program with Dr. Bob Thiel. Dr. Thiel, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization recently held a meeting in Tashkent, Uzbekistan. What countries currently comprise the SCO and what is their objective?
Well, the SEO was founded in Shanghai on the 15th of June back in 2001. And it has as members China, India, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Russia, Pakistan, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan. Then they've got observer nations, including Afghanistan, Belarus, Iran, and Mongolia. And then they've got what they call dialogue partners, which includes Armenia, uh, Azerbaijan, Cambodia, Nepal, Sri Lanka, and Turkey. And when you actually look at a map, basically looks like they're covering pretty much almost all the countries in Asia, other than Southeast Asia. And then there are others, such as in the Middle East, such as Qatar and Saudi Arabia, that have been talking to them. Basically, they claim to be a partnership for peace and prosperity. They basically agreed to some type of military cooperation and some types of economic cooperation.
What were some of the specific points that were brought up at the meeting that the SCO recently held?
Well, basically, what they said is they want more interconnectivity. In other words, to be able to have more efficient transport corridors. And that kind of ties in with what the Chinese have been doing, because the Chinese have their One Belt, One Road project, also known as the Silk Road project, which basically is putting more actual roads within Asia so the Asians can transport goods and trade with each other. And they're also building ports, and those ports will also allow goods to be going through. The other thing, however, that came up was the use of the US dollar. The foreign minister of Russia, Sergei Lavrov, basically said that the United States is using its dollar as a weapon, and maybe they shouldn't be using it amongst themselves for trade, and that they've had issues with others about this, and that this should be a time to do something with it. And there was actually a question, should the SCO abandon the US dollar? And Sergei Lavrov said, each SCO country must decide itself how comfortable it feels to rely on the dollar, taking into account the absolute unreliability of this currency for possible abuses. The Americans have used this more than once in relation to a number of states. So that was a concern that they have. But again, they want more cooperation amongst themselves. And in terms of the US dollar, let me also mention that some of the states that are part of the SCO are also part of an organization called BRICS. Now, BRICS stands for Brazil, which is not in Asia, but Russia, India, China, and South Africa, which is also not in Asia. But those middle three are all in Asia. They're important. Russia is the largest landmass country in the world, and India and China are number one and number two in terms of population. China right now is a little bit higher, but India thinks they may pass China in terms of numbers. But why mention that? Because according to former Brazilian President Lula, the reason the BRICS organization was originally formed was to bypass US dollar. So you've got the BRICS nations, and the biggest ones of them are in the SCO. So this is something that they are working on, and it was something that came up during that time. Another thing that came up is that they think more nations are interested in joining them.
Okay, so indeed, the SCO is not a closed organization, and they're seeking other Gentile nations to join them. Would that be accurate?
As a matter of fact, in September of 2022, they're planning on having another meeting, and the nations of Iran and Belarus are looking to be possible full members. Now you can understand Iran because the United States has a lot of sanctions against Iran, and the United States has a lot of sanctions against Russia, and is even talking this past week about sanctions, more sanctions against China, and Belarus, being a close ally of Russia, also has been sanctioned and subject to additional sanctions. So these sanctioned countries are sort of getting together and saying, hey, we don't need to deal with the West. So those are things that are going on. And again, there's other countries in the Middle East that are actually interested in joining the SCO.
Okay. Well, Dr. Teal, are there any prophecies from the Bible that relate to the events taking place within these various Gentile organizations?
Well, actually, yes. The Bible has some warnings about things that are going to happen during the final times of the Gentiles. And some of them, for example, let me go to the book of Ezekiel. And I'm going to read from Ezekiel chapter 7. This is from the Old Testament, starting verse 23. And this will be from the New King James Version of the Bible. It says, make a chain, for the land is full or filled with crimes of blood, and the city is full of violence. Therefore, I will bring the worst of the Gentiles, and they will possess their homes, their houses. I will cause the pomp and the strong to cease, and their holy places shall be defiled. Destruction comes, they will seek peace, but there shall be none. So basically, this is a warning that some of the Israelite descended nations, which we see in North America and in Western Europe, are going to have issues with the worst of the Gentiles. So this is a prophecy that we see here. Now, as far as times of the Gentiles, Jesus talked about them as well. I'm going to read his words from Luke chapter 21, starting verse 23. Jesus said, but woe to those who are pregnant and those who are nursing babies in those days, for there'll be great distress in the land and wrath upon this people. And they will fall by the edge of the sword and be led away captive into all nations. And Jerusalem will be trampled by Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles are fulfilled. So Jesus is saying there's final times of the Gentiles. He had plural, so there's more than one. And so something's going to happen there. Now, we also read about something similar in the book of Revelation, Revelation chapter 11. Revelation is also known as the Apocalypse. Verse 2 says, but leave out the court, which is outside the temple, and do not measure it. For it's been given to the Gentiles, and they will tread the holy city underfoot for 42 months. Now, Jesus, Ezekiel, and John, who penned Revelation, are talking about the same time. And the time of Gentile domination is prophesied. And it will include what you would call World War III, could call World War III, and actually what I would call World War IV, which is what people tend to call the Battle of Armageddon. Even though troops don't actually battle at Armageddon, they're gathered at Armageddon. Now, the term Armageddon is only used once in the Bible, and this is in the book of Revelation, chapter 16. And so I want to read something about this, starting verse 12, Revelation 16. Then the sixth angel poured out his bowl in the great river Euphrates. Its water was dried up, so the way of the kings from the east might be prepared. Now, the Greek word isn't really east. It means the kings of the sunrise, okay, which of course would be east. And this would be, for example, China. And by the way, there's no country that's more east than Russia, okay? Russia, it's so far east, it kind of extends into the west. And then, other nations over there. And we'll skip down to verse 16. It says, they gathered them together in a place in Hebrew called Armageddon. And by the way, I've looked at the roads from China's One Belt, One Road project, and it gets them closer to the Euphrates and closer to getting there. So I suspect that it may be that some of the One Belt, One Road project are going to actually be involved with troop movement going over to Armageddon. Now, I mentioned the kings of the East includes Asian nations, including Russia. And there's a prophecy, a very interesting prophecy in the book of Jeremiah. Jeremiah chapter 50, starting in verse 41. I'd like to read. Behold, the people shall come from the north, a great nation, and many kings shall be raised from the ends of the earth. Well, north is only one end, there's also the east. They shall hold the bow and the lance. They are cruel and shall not show mercy. Their voice shall roar like the sea. They shall ride on horses, set in array like a man for the battle. Against you, O daughter of Babylon. Verse 43, the king of Babylon has heard the report about them, and his hands grow feeble. Anguish has taken hold of him, pangs as of a woman in childbirth. Now you notice it's called the daughter of Babylon. This is talking about the end time Babylon that the Bible warns about in the book of Revelation, particularly chapter 17 and chapter 18. And you see that that Babylonian system, the daughter of Babylon, it's not the old Babylon, this is the daughter of Babylon, is afraid for people from the north and from the ends of the earth. These are basically places that are part of the SCO. When you look at a map, and I think some countries that are currently not in the SCO are going to join in. And so these are things that are prophesied. There are additional prophecies, for example, in Isaiah 13, which I won't take the time to read. But as far as prophecies go, the Bible also says that in Isaiah 46:11, God says, I've spoken it, I'll also bring it to pass. I purpose it and will do it. So yes, there's something going to be happening from these Gentile nations.
Very interesting. Dr. Teal, from a biblical perspective, where's all this heading? What will be the end of the matter as far as the Gentile nations are concerned?
Well, first there'll be the Babylonian nation will rise up, and we'll see a reorganization in Europe. Europe is prophesied, even though it looks dead, in Revelation 13, the first few verses, to become actually a successful military power. It will actually take over the British-descended nations such as the United States, UK, Canada, and I think it'll allow China to deal with places like Australia, New Zealand. It'll also invade the Middle East, according to Bible prophecies such as Daniel 11, verses 40 through 43. But then in verse 44, we see that this Babylonian power gets concerned. Verse 44 of Daniel 11 says, news from the east and the north shall trouble him, and he'll go out with great fury. And I was reading those prophecies from Jeremiah, for example, the north, and I've been from Revelation to people from the east. It's all the same types of things. What will happen is this European power will get together, and they will end up destroying this end time Babylonian power to a major degree. Let me read something from Isaiah. I'll read from Isaiah 13, several verses here. It says, the burden against Babylon, which Isaiah, the son of Amos, saw. Lift up a banner on the high mountain. Raise your voice to them. Wave your hand that they may enter the gates of the nobles. I've commanded my sanctified ones. I've called the mighty ones for my anger, those who rejoice in my exultation. The noise of the multitude in the mountains like that of many people, a tumultuous noise of the kingdoms of the nations gathered together. The Lord of hosts musters the army for battle. They come from a far country, from the end of heaven. So again, the far north, far east. The Lord and his weapons of indignation to destroy the whole land. Wail, for the day of the Lord is at hand. Will come as destruction from the Almighty. Therefore, all hands will be limp. Every man's heart will melt. They will be afraid. Pangs and sorrows will take hold of them. They will be in pain as a woman in childbirth, just like I mentioned in Jeremiah. They'll be amazed at one another. Their faces will be like flames. So there's an end-time confederation going to eliminate end-time Babylon. The good news is, after all this, Jesus will return and establish the millennial kingdom of God. That's the good news of the kingdom of God. However, between now and then, a great time of difficulties and warfare will happen.
Bad news and then good news. Thank you very much, Dr. Teal. For more interviews with Dr. Teal, as well as written articles and videos, visit our website at BibleNewsProphecy.net. This is Steve Dupuy for the Bible News Prophecy Program.